Today we're going to talk about market liquidity. Anybody who follows this channel knows that we believe, or I believe, that stock markets are a function of liquidity, not interest rates. Now, individual stocks can be a function of an interest rate, but for the most part, stock markets are a function of liquidity. Now, since 2013, all the world has done QE. And when COVID, they doubled down, tripled down, and we had a huge amount of liquidity come into the market. So how does that manifest itself? Because it's different from around the world. Anybody who follows this channel knows that we've been talking about Germany and Europe for last 7-8 months. And there's not been one good news item whatsoever. There's nothing good there. They're literally entering their third year of recession. Remember something. Here in the US, if we have 3 down months, we call that a recession. They're in their third year, okay? And yet, the DAX is at an all-time high. An all-time high. Their own politicians are saying they're in a depressionary environment. Depressionary, not recessionary, depressionary environment at an all-time high. This is how liquidity manifests itself in a stock market. But then you say, well, let's go to the United States. We certainly have done QE, and now we're doing QT. But our economy is doing rather well compared to every economy in the world. Right? It's not even close. So how did it manifest, the liquidity manifest itself in America? Well, I would argue that look at our stock valuations, NVIDIA, Tesla. NVIDIA is selling 33 times revenue. Think of that. My father was one of the original consultants. I remember asking when I was in high school, I said, so how do you determine how you're going to take over a company? And he goes, 3 times revenue, cash flow. He says, I want the cash flow back in 3 years. He said, that's all I need. It doesn't matter about the profit. Just give me the cash flow, 3 times. They're 143 times. That's how liquidity manifests itself here in America, all right? So why are we talking about this now? Well, here's our favorite chart. As everyone knows, this shows our Fed balance sheet. And I want to remind people, there's a huge difference between the Fed balance sheet effects on the asset prices and our budget, where we have a deficit, where we spend money. Think about how it happens. If we approve a bill for, let's say, the CHIP Act, then companies come to us. They say, we're going to build this chip plant. We need $5 billion. They go over the plans, and then when they get it, they have to go out and hire people, all the building materials, so forth and so on. The money goes into the system entirely different. When you have the Fed balance sheet, it goes directly into our banks, and it directly affects asset prices. And that is why we have this manifestation in different places, different reasons, but it's all because of liquidity. So now, as you can see here, when COVID started, we added $3 trillion into the markets there, okay? We went from $4 to $7 trillion. Then we jumped up another 2.1 to a little under $9 trillion. Now we've taken off $2.1 trillion, okay? Now, here's the question. Is there a tipping point on liquidity? Back in 2023, I saw an interview by Jamie Dimon, and I would suggest that you always watch Jamie Dimon's interviews. He runs the largest bank in the world. And you're right, he can't say a lot of things, but what he says, he's very precise, concise in what he says. It's our job to listen to him and try to figure out what message he's trying to tell us. Because you could sit here and go on the internet, I could go on the internet and say, we're gonna have 15% inflation, 20% interest rates, and no one would care, okay? If Jamie Dimon did that, all hell would break loose. Remember that. He can't say everything. So I believe this was at Davos. And so that means it was either January or February of 2023. And he's in the interview. They don't even ask him the question. He volunteers his views on QT, and here they are. He can express concern about the unprecedented scale of QT. We are taking off $95 billion a month. Now we do $25 billion. Then he said, we've never experienced this before. So totally true. One, we never blew up our balance sheet by $7 trillion. And of course, we've never taken it down by $2 trillion, ever. We don't know. And think about this. Where was the market when we started? It was like 15,000 points lower. So now we're much higher, 15,000 points higher. And what liquidity do we need to maintain the 15,000 points more? Think about that, okay? Then he said, QT could be one of the factors contributing to potential economic volatility. And next was they were looking to tighten. We're doing Basel III. We've done multiple videos on that. And he also says we have other factors like geopolitical tensions and ongoing fiscal spending could lead to stickier inflation. Remember, this is early 2023. So he advised clients to be prepared for a wide range of interest rates from 2 to 8% or even more, partly due to the effects of QT. So, what do we care and why are we watching this? What we don't know, I certainly don't know, no one in the world knows, is as we continue to do QT, it's only at $25 billion now a month, okay? And the CMBS, someone made a comment the other day, I'll just remind you that they were gonna let, I think, 25 or 35 billion run off a month of CMBS. And because most of those people have very low mortgages, the CMBS was not rolling over at that level. It was much lower, like, $8 or $10 billion, okay? So the CMBS is not as, let's say, moves as much as the bonds do, okay? So here we are. Now, here's the question. Is there a tipping point on our liquidity? Can we go down another 300 billion, 100 billion, $1, a trillion, 2 trillion? What is the answer, right? We know we've been taking liquidity out of the market. Now remember something. If we give $1 to the government, $1's not spent because of all the iterations it has to go through to make it into the economy. But think about the banks. When we give them $1, is it $1 that goes into the markets? No, they keep 4 cents. That's what they legally have to keep. They then throw 96 cents. They're actually leveraged up 15 to 20 times. So if you're taking 2 trillion off of the balance sheet, which means away from our bank, multiply it. 2 trillion times 15, 2 trillion times 20. And if you're talking about the hedge funds and you're talking about private equity, just up it. It's 30, 40 times, okay? So we're losing a lot of liquidity, but we still have a historic amount, not as much as we did, but it certainly is a lot of liquidity. So if the stock markets are a function of liquidity, is there a tipping point for QT? Let me know what you think. Certainly comment and like and follow. Thank you very much.